How are you guys? Welcome to the farm.
Hey, welcome. Thanks for having us.
Hey, brother. Thank you so much for the platform.
Yeah, man, I appreciate you guys. I appreciate you guys for coming here and being here for this conversation, man. I'm excited for today. What do you guys expect tonight?
Revolution? I mean, short answer. But that's what I expect at any moment.
You had it first, from our brother here, it's a revolution, but also, thought leadership, right? And I think that's what we have on the table.
Yeah, absolutely. His Excellency Ezra, welcome to the family as well. It's good to see you.
Hi everyone. Good to be here. I was just having some bit of a challenge with my network, but hopefully this is fixed now.
Oh yeah. Can hear you loud and clear. It's been a moment, Ezra. Welcome back. It's good to hear your voice.
It's really good to be here. Looking forward to conversation with everyone and interacting with everyone who's joining us tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So guys, I'm actually here with Ezra. Ezra is one of my co-hosts. We host a lot of different shows here on the channel. So he's also part of the team SNOA. But just for the startup, maybe we can introduce ourselves. For those who are joining right now, maybe they don't know us. It'll be very important to know who is this person talking. Let's start with Gamma. Gamma, who are you, man? Where are you from? What are you doing? Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, colleagues, for this platform. My name is Gamma Cuba. I'm an activist and an entrepreneur. I'm the current youth president for the People's Movement for Change Youth Command. Fortunate enough to be leading among great other presidents like Marius Fransman, Nomisama Ango, president of the Women's Command, and a number of other extreme, incredible politicians who had a great profile in the country. I'm the youngest trying to make a move. From my entrepreneurial endeavors, I'm a social entrepreneur. I believe in harnessing, entrepreneurial activities within local economies such as townships, and exposing those particular businesses to capital. So therefore, I partner with venture capitals from Germany, from the UK, really addressing the issue of capital inequality, for South African emerging economies, So, super excited being here. I'm so excited.
Amazing. Yes, my brother, I don't want to, am I misspelling your name? Is it Michel, or how to pronounce your name?
Just Mitchell. Mitchell's correct.
Mitchell. All right. Yeah. Mitchell, you're up, man.
So yeah, I doubt many people will know me at all. I'm a relatively new face on the scene, but an old soul nonetheless. My name is Mitchell Black. I am a being, first and foremost, son of the soil. I am doing my doctorate in philosophy at the University of Pretoria. So that's my formal occupation, is I'm trying to get accredited as a philosopher, so people will take me seriously in academia. But then I am also the head of research and policy alignment for Gauteng, for Rise Mzansi, a new political party, still a baby, but pushing hard and working hard. Yeah, that's what I fill my time up with, is I write policy, and I spend a lot of time working with communities to understand their policy needs and trying to shift the window of possible policy in this part of the continent towards the type of policy that will give everyone a flourishing future.
Appreciate that, Michelle. Ezra. Are you able to talk? Perhaps he's having.
Yeah.
All right.
Here you go. Just, yeah, hopefully this is stable now. Thank you very much. I'm sorry for all this delays and whatnot. Um, yeah. What do they want to know about myself? My name is Ezra. Um, I'm in the IT field. That's what I do for the most part. Also a member in a Swahili Nation family, contributor, activist, uh, and yeah, that's what I basically do as well in my part time. And I love working with people. I love working with mostly with ministry. But yeah, basically that's in short that's what I do. There's a lot that I do, but some I'll reveal as time goes by. Thank you.
That's wonderful, wonderful. Perhaps, guys, we can start like this. I would love to hear from you guys. Why do you think it is important for us as youth, to have the conversation that we're having today? Why do you think it is important? Anyone can go. I think I don't have to pick someone, but why do you think it is important for us to have this talk, and to just open up?
Thank you so much, colleagues. I think um, it's such a significant season in South African politics today, but also in the broader spectrum of African politics, right? Because South Africa, in some way, then sets a certain trajectory into how the continental economics, as well as geopolitics within the African scale, would look like, right? And so I think it's so significant first for us to have this conversation. This is the notion of democracy as public discourse, right? And public opinion is so important to conscientize the public about what their rights are, what the challenges they are facing contrary to the rights, and what things should change versus to what things have been in the past. And I think, we as young people ought to be aware that Africa has the youngest demographic in the world, with a median that's at 21. In Europe, with a median of 40. And so this means young Africans are still going to be the future till 2050. And so therefore, it's so important for us to have these kind of conversations so that we can kind of reflect concurrently on what is actively happening. This is the notion of active citizenry, right? And while we continue to reflect, we then continue to pragmatize what is happening, right? And so I think this conversation is so significant from an awareness point of view to start with.
I would agree with Gama. It's important to have from an awareness point of view, but I also think that this conversation or these dialogues are important because we have no choice. The world is on fire, and it depends what lens you want to look at that through. Whether you want to look at it through an economic lens and you want to see the consistent economic crashes that are plaguing the global north, the perpetually and consistently underdeveloped, purposefully situation of Africa. If you want to look at it through a social lens with the crisis of mental health, the plague of social media, the relationship that we have globally with drugs and alcohol, the rates of violence against women, not just in South Africa where it's particularly bad, but globally, our relationship with nature, going from a sociological to an ecological lens, the rate at which we are causing these other unique and beautiful gifts, these species, to go extinct is terrifying. And then on top of that, you have the climate crisis, you have pandemics, you have all of these other things. And where we find ourselves today, that moment, so all of that pulled together, the term that we use is polycrisis, right? We are in a moment of polycrisis, overlapping, interlinking multiple crises at all levels of society. So I think we must understand the stakes, that if we as a generation do nothing, we may be the last generation to be remembered in a very real way. So I think that if we look at the potential scale of suffering that is ahead of us, we have an obligation to those who come after us to have this conversation today. So that's why I say we have no choice.
Yeah. So good. His Excellence, do you have anything to add there?
I think it is the time for the youth to really be participating in all spheres of society, whether it's the economy, whether it's political, whether it's climate change, all those things. We need to be involved and we need to be informed. And it's up to even the youth that are already in position of influence, in position of know-how, or who possess the knowledge to even share. As we're having like these panels, these are discussion panels where we can do knowledge sharing, and also learn from one another, because we're all coming from different angles, different industries or fields, and we all possess different skills. And as we have panels like this or discussions like this, it's how we can empower each other, because most of our generation, we watch each other's moves, we watch what they're doing, we watch the trends, and it's mostly people of our age group, you know. So when we discuss such things, instead of leaving it to the elderly in our countries, or the political people who've been in the space for a long time, to listen to them, people are tired of that as well. They need to give that. As we building platforms like this as youth, it helps us a lot, so that other youth can listen, other youth can learn, and other youth can participate and see that it is doable. And they need to also engage and learn from others, and also be active in the day-to-day running of their countries. I'll just leave it there for now. But I think it's very important for us as youth to empower in one another through knowledge, through media, as a powerful tool as we having Swahili Nation. And I think this is where we should be starting as youth, through knowledge and through sharing what we know.
Yeah, appreciate His Excellence. Now, Michelle, you mentioned a couple issues that are facing the world right now, but I'd love for us to kind of like go specific in the context of South Africa. What are the issues that South Africa right now at the moment is facing? Problem and issue, because we're talking about election, and in order for us to know maybe who we want to vote for, or who is going to be the best leader for whatever that is happening, it's really important to know the challenges, the problems that this particular place is facing. Therefore, it will be easy for us to actually think about the policies of every single individual that is running for the government, to know that I think this will be the right choice to solve these issues and these problems that we're facing.
Yeah. So my initial response, as soon as my brain goes there, is we have all of the issues. I think South Africa is a what's it called? Not a looking glass, a magnifying glass on all of the world's issues. You want economic inequality? We've got the worst economic inequality. You want gender-based violence? We've got the worst gender-based violence. You want corruption? We've got the worst corruption. We've got all of it. But to be more specific about what is plaguing us, I have two answers. One is a very pragmatic one, and one is a very philosophical one. So the first answer is, I think the thing that we need to solve for, and the big problem in South Africa, is inequality of all kinds. Inequality of capital, as Gama talks about, inequality of land ownership, inequality of water access, inequality of safety, inequality of prosperity, all of the above. So I think inequality is our measure that we need to solve for, because to date, we've never undone the patterns of colonialism and apartheid. So that's the pragmatic answer. I think the philosophical answer is the problem, and it was correctly identified by Biko, is spiritual poverty. I think that is the defining problem, even perhaps regionally, that to quote Maponga J, we do not yet own the land between our ears in this country. And it is a profound problem that we still see the world through a European lens, and we imagine the future through a European lens.
Yeah. Appreciate that. Nhongo just joined us. Nhongo, Do you mind to introduce yourself? Welcome. It's good to see you. It's good to have you.
No, thank you so much. It's also good to be here. So when you pronounce my name, it's a silent H. So you pronounce it as if H doesn't exist. So it becomes Nongo. Noah Solo. Greetings, everyone. Evening. Good to see all the great faces from South Africa and from the continent. My name is Noah Solo, as Leader Maker already indicated, and I stay in the east, in Gauteng, and in South Africa, specifically in the east side of Gauteng, which is Ekurhuleni.
You're on mute, Mika.
I was saying I'm having a hard time to hear. Can you guys hear?
The mic is a little bit muddied.
Is it a bit low?
Yeah, I can hear you speak, but I don't understand what exactly you're saying.
Let's try again. Can you hear me now?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, yes. That's clear. So, how do I pronounce your name? Because I don't want to get it wrong. Is it Nhongo Solo or?
You are pronouncing it fine. Just silent H. Treat it as the H doesn't exist, so it becomes Nongo.
Ah, Nongo. All right. That's really good. Here, you know, in my language, just say Nhongo. We pronounce everything. We don't leave nothing. Yeah. So, Nongo. Did you say exactly? I mean, who are you? What you're doing? I did not hear anything.
Okay, no, I just didn't go deep into it. I said I'm from South Africa, Gauteng, and in the east side of Gauteng, which is Ekurhuleni. But basically, if you want me to go further, I'm the co-founder of an NPO youth organization called Abacha Force of Change, which is a youth organization that seeks to restore African identity. We run with a slogan that says fearless voices for African identity. And the youth organization started at the height or at the ignition of Fees Must Fall, when we realized that our struggle of equality decolonized education was being infiltrated by political parties. And we saw a need to actually create a platform that is apolitical, firstly, but also we realized that the struggle is also affected by first-year students whose parents are eager to see their kids succeeding in such a crisis of economic disbalance in South Africa. And so the parents will give clear instructions to their kids that they must go to university and they must not join any political struggle, but they must just come with their degrees. So we saw a need to actually go into high schools and primary schools and go and give political, electoral, constitutional education at a younger age, so that these kids start becoming mentally independent away from the elders' influence and persuasion.
Yeah. Wow. That's really cool. It's really cool. All right. So I believe we were answering one question that Michelle actually already expressed his thoughts. Is there anyone else want to add anything? Oh, that was it.
Yeah, look, I think you know, on the notion of issue-based politics, right? Issue-based politics is all forms of politics. I know that there is this whole mass hysteria that is facade, you know, I call it pseudo-politics, where people think cerebral appealing terminology that is, you know, baseline bookism is supposed to be politics. Politics, from the term on its epistemology, comes from the Greek word politeia. It's the word polis, which means public, it means people. And if politics is uprooted from the human experience beyond the research, then it is not politics. And so this is what we're dealing with, right? This cut and paste Eurocentric point of view of individuals that have written their daily experiences in pieces of paper and trying to implement them daily in an African context. This is where the mess begins from. So I think, you know, issue-based politics is all forms of politics in an African context. And so then what would be the challenges that we're facing as South Africans? You know, Mitchell, I'm so excited, you know, that an African who is not an African of color, right? is raising these issues and is, actually identifying that we're actually facing issues, whether it's capital inequality, whether it's land inequality, on the issues of justice first. And I want to highlight, justice does not mean just us, right? Justice just means appropriating the past in a progressive manner to say, how do we move on from here, right? And so, look, for example, in our country, we have an economic gap that is unbelievable, colleagues. An unbelievable economic gap. I always say when I speak to my colleagues who are super, super wealthy, I say wealth is not a problem. But if South Africa over a 30-year period has under 17,800 black millionaires, this is a problem, because this means we can never have a larger middle class. South Africans as blacks are 58 million. And in the 30 years of liberation, there's only 17,500 black millionaires. Biz News, 2022. So the problem first I would like to highlight is an economic problem. I want to submit that we need an economic CODESA, not a political CODESA. And so I think before we begin to talk about there's issues with drugs, give people money, they will deal with drugs better. There's an issue with families they are breaking, give people money, they will deal with their personal problems better. Even the psychologists and the marriage counselors, they handle these marriages better when they are paid better, right? And once we say food security, let's make sure that at a local level, that the economy is healthy, that people are able to farm within their communities. So you can't even talk food security when people make under $50 a week, guys. People make under $50 a week in South Africa. My friends from America, they were laughing at me. They say, no. How much does the government? I say 300. They give our people 350. They were laughing. They said, this is a joke. And so somehow, this is supposed to be a good thing that the government of Cyril Ramaphosa gives us 350 rands. And so I want to highlight, at the center of all these problems, the cornerstone of these problems, guys, is economics. It's money, guys. We must not go around and be saying many things. Give people money, they will deal with drugs better. They will deal with divorces better. They will deal with issues better. And I think, we must not underestimate. We need an economic CODESA. Thank you so much.
All right. So maybe I should ask the same question. Then we have already addressed that the issue is, of course, inequality. And that's not only in the context of South Africa, actually. It's, you see that everywhere you go in the continent of Africa. But I know in South Africa is extreme case. But how are we solving the issue of inequality today in South Africa? How do we do that? What kind of policies do you think it will help us as youth to know that, okay, this is what we're supposed to do to solve this issue? Because I went to South Africa and I was not there for a long time, but I've witnessed people working their butt off. People, they're not just sitting home and do nothing, but people, they really work hard, right? The same thing, if you come to my country, you find them do that. But if you go to some areas, you find people who they have everything they want, and some other areas, you say $50 a week. Like people, they're living under $1 a day here in my country, Tanzania. $1 a day. That means they choose only like to have one meal in a day, and that meal it could be like ugali without mboga. Ugali is like fufu, the Nigerian thing, without mboga, without any side dish, a day, the whole day. So how do we tackle this issue? Because this has been the problem all the time. I think South Africa and so many parts of Africa. How do we solve this issue?
Well,
His Excellency can go.
Yeah, someone else perhaps start.
I think because I came late, I am not sure how the conversation has been structured, and that's the disadvantage of coming in late. But maybe let me also highlight that. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Let me also highlight that one of the reasons I'm very, very active in an educational space, which I call educational activist, it's simply because one of the views that I carry is that the fundamental is education. So yes, I'm hearing my leader Gama saying give people money, but if people have money and have no clue with what to do with that money, they may not entirely contribute to the society. So education becomes the fundamental, because at any point, there must be a generation that is prepared to sacrifice and accept that they've got nothing to lose, but to actually give back to the next generation entirely. And that is to ensure that we sacrifice by sharing all that we have with the next generation. And I'll make a simple example. Today, at my age, I may not have, and many South Africans probably may not have the skill to plant any kind of food that they eat on a daily basis. Yet our parents and our forefathers were doing that as a lifestyle, as a culture, something they were doing on a daily basis. But because there was no impartation of that knowledge, then it means they could not sacrifice to give the next generation empowerment. And therefore, under the entire colonization and entire new culture that was brought in, the gap remains to grow because of that lack of impartation. Now, even when the new government of democracy came in, they could not even change what actually oppressed us, which was education. Because when the oppressors and the colonizers came, the first thing they understood was that if they want to take over, they have to change how we think entirely. They have to take our complete identity, how we do things, our culture, and give us a new knowledge. And from doing that, when our democratic government came in, they continued with that system. So you spend your entire 13 years in school doing nothing. You spend the entire hours at home gaining nothing. So there's a gap everywhere, even in churches. The education in churches is also not accurate anymore. So everywhere the education is missed. It is miseducation. It's no longer the accurate education. So we need to start with education as the fundamental liberator. What we speak at home, the information we are exchanging, the information I'm exchanging with my nephews, with my kids, the information they are receiving at school, the information that they're going to receive at the higher learning institutions, the information they're receiving at church. And so that when we speak about land, for example, and we speak about expropriation of land, when they take that land, they already understand the value of the land, and they don't think of a shack as the first point of action, because they already have been taught the value of land, that the land has so much value, the land can produce food, the land has resources, the land has minerals. And so once you start with education as the fundamental, you will even discover that now the young people that are roaming around the streets subjected to drug abuse, they can actually collect the waste that they are doing every day, and they can convert it into energy, which is a crisis in South Africa. And it takes education.
I couldn't agree more with Namro. So good. Couldn't agree more. I would pair that with access to land and education.
His Excellency, you wanted to add something. That was very insightful. But I'm gonna have a follow-up question a little bit later. Ezra, you had something.
I think good points are all raised, and I think education sometimes it's when in easy terms, I think we need to just say knowledge, because sometimes that's when people argue and say education doesn't do anything for them, because they don't understand the power of knowledge through education. And knowledge comes in many ways. There's the skills part of it, and it's not just about the academia part only, but the skills that comes with it, and the exposure to information, and the exposure to the world and things that are out there in the world, and how things are made and all those things. I think that's very important when they're raising the education factor, where we can talk about skills. And again, I think we can even open this question more further in terms of what kind of education are we talking about? Because we've seen in Africa, there's a lot of graduates who are now regretting even going to school, because they've done their education, they've got their master's degrees, their whatever you call it, and they still don't see the value in it. And I think we need to ask further, what with this education, after the education, what skills, how can we apply the knowledge we have, and where do we even start? Because a lot of youth, those are like practical questions, how and where, things like that, and where to acquire those skills, how to apply them. That's the important factor in Africa when you look at how many graduates we have who are not even practicing what they are supposed to, what they studied for, or what they have knowledge for, and how to use the very same skills to either empower themselves through business and all those other things that can really help the economy and help our countries to grow. Because I think another factor that we in South Africa we've also discussed a bit about in terms of graduates who are looking for jobs instead of graduates that can really empower themselves in terms of starting industries, starting businesses and stuff. And obviously, when you start saying that, they ask you, where's the money to start those businesses? Give us the funding, give us this. There's a lot of questions that you can really ask yourself when it comes to how do we empower each other in such a way that we can also stand for one another and stand for independently instead of also running for the state, because the state really needs each and everyone to contribute as well. It needs the taxes to help those who are still coming up. The free education we're talking about, there has to be money where it has to come from. It's either we're going to borrow from the international funders, or we're going to have to take it from either the taxes and all those other places. So it's another question that I'm also just putting on the floor. Because I know that there's people who always bash education. When you say education, we need to stretch it out and say what brings education, what's in it in this education, how can it be useful to the youth of Africa? Because a lot of youth in Africa, there are those who are educated, there are those who are struggling to get the access to that very education we're talking about. So this education it's very important. I agree that we need to get knowledge. But how can we as Africa, how can we as South Africa make sure that this education people can value it, can see the value in this education? Because there's certain sectors and certain places where we can see that other people have not been enlightened to understand, why do you really need to go to school? You're not going to school for your parents. You're not going to school to get a job. But the importance, the background of why you need to do this, because I think there's also a lot of things that I just said, the systems that we find in this world, and we just follow, and then we don't understand them. We don't see the value in them. We just say, no, it's a formality. They say I must go to school. But then what? Yeah. And things like career guidance and career counseling, it's something that's very important. That's needed, I think, in our country, in South Africa. And I think in the whole of Africa, because there's a lot of people who don't understand even the careers they're doing. Some people, when I met them in varsity, they didn't even know what to study. They just chose a course because that was the only available course that they can do there, And they said, okay, let me just do it because I'm already here. So, but yeah, I'll leave the question further to maybe Michelle or Gama can expand on this.
Brother, thank you so much. I think, this is the crux of Africa's issues. It all rotates around the issue of sustainability, right? And the world rotates around the economy. And I think we would take an opportunity to become generic and act like values are not centered around valuables, right? I don't mean to rebut the speakers on the notion of education, because education is central to development. I am of the position that South African education system and African education system has to still be deconstructed to move beyond working for the West, because the education system is a manufacturing factory for the new slavery. You get educated enough to know how to work for some European company. And I think Nigeria is doing it well. It's producing the most billion-dollar companies in Africa. And I think, maybe we need to go beyond the research. Of course, we cannot rebut education. It is the crux of development, human development, not just economic development in its sense, right? But I think, You know, we are aware that the studies, the research does say 6% of, you know, dropouts become successful. And so I am not by any chance, by any means, promoting dropouts, right? So I don't want you to hear me wrong. So I'm not rebutting the previous statements, but I just want us to be pragmatic. In a country where the education system transitioned from Bantu education, where the famous Verwoerd said, what will the blacks do with math and science? Let them learn how to wash dishes and water flowers. A 40-year-old white person in 2023 was a security guard. A 56-year-old, a security guard. When a 56-year-old white just retired from becoming a doctor and started their small business. And a small business is between 5 million to 10 million rands, guys, right? You know, so the question here is not should we be educated or not, what should we do to actually tackle the social issues? And my, despondency on the issue of, juxtaposing this question with the notion of knowledge, hoarding, knowledge hoarding, is we need to maybe start looking at foreign policy around the investment of capital into South Africa. In South Africa, it's easy to take money, but it's harder to take money out. So a number of investors are complaining. I can invest $10 million into your country, and your country can give me citizenship because I've put in $10 million, but I cannot take money out. But secondly, South Africans who've made a fortune from apartheid, the apartheid beneficiaries like Cobus Becker, the owner of Nerspas, who was at the height of supporting and funding apartheid. He has money. His money is not even in South Africa, right? So the country must have a beneficiary tax. It must have a luxury tax for the criminals that are successful from criminal gains, right? But also, maybe we ought to rethink how international funds get into the country. They go straight to the governmental, developmental, financial institutions, which I openly say, skip the governmental, developmental, financial institutions like SEDA, like SIFA, like NYDA. These are the most useless organizations the country has ever had. Like, for example, an institution like the NYDA, it has offices away from where people are actually doing business, where the old gogo wakes up in the morning in Gauteng, is in a taxi rank. She woke up at 5 a.m. She's selling amakwenya, selling ikota, selling gravy, selling, when I'm in Gauteng, I always go kwa my and I see these old women that are doing this. And by the way, in South Africa, informal entrepreneurs are old women. And so there's nothing like women are not in business in African context, right? Yeah. They take kids to universities and they make doctors, they taxi drivers. People say South African men are lazy. There's nothing like that. South African men are loaded in the taxi association. They are gangsters. They're in the dangerous aspects of society to feed their families. They are the mine workers. So the problem is still money, guys. That's why I call for the economic codesa, right? And so even furthermore, right, guys, we need to be very, very, very frank. When Europeans bring money, let's take the Western Cape where I am. The Western Cape is not surviving because the DA is such a wonderful political party. It's surviving because of two reasons. Cheap labor. They take foreigners from Mozambique, outer Africans from Mozambique, from Zimbabwe. They underpay them because they know South Africans will demand minimum wage, right? And the second reason is foreign capital. If you take foreign capital from the Western Cape, it will crash. It will collapse. It's not good governance. It's money from Europe. And Europeans are investing immensely into the Western Cape, particularly because of something that I call blind spots, right? They invest in people that look like them. A European will come all the way from Sweden and see me and Michelle. We are doing the same business, making the same turnover a year, but they will invest in Michelle, not me. Not because of anything. Some of them, they're just blatantly racists, but others is just blind spots. And this is where Africa comes in. To mentor whiteness, and whiteness is not a person. Whiteness is a system, first psychologically, that disadvantages white people first from participating in diverse relationships, but even more so, disadvantaging the whole world from integrating on an economic level, right? So we must have things that are intentional. We say if Mitchell comes with $100 million from America and is a white American, what companies does he invest in? So you ask yourself, where are the white South Africans that are driving taxis? Where are the white South Africans that are selling in the streets? Why is there private and the public? It's because foreign capital maintains and continues to permeate the inequality by investing in young South African, white South African businesses that will employ me and Ezra to work for 8,000 rands, whereas the guy has received $20 million. You know, so I want us to think, you know, so that would be my point of view. And of course, then I would say the education system, if deconstructed, it must focus on business, it must focus on commerce, it must focus on, you know, on farming, you know, which is the most important. You know, agroeconomy is the most significant. South Africa is the most arable lands in Africa, you know, and we have an opportunity here if we start focusing on those kind of things. And of course, you know, me and a friend of mine, we believe that the fourth industrial revolution is a little bit too fast. South Africa cannot leapfrog because of data inequality. And so we must start industrializing South Africa. We must have factories. We must fund Ezra to have his dream factory of, you know, of textile industry, of, you know, IT, you know, he must compete with Jeff Bezos or something. That's my point of view, colleagues.
Yeah. Before I let you, Michelle, I want to add something in the concept of education, because I think, you know, research shows that every single year in Africa, we have more than 10 million young Africans that graduate from school, and only 3 million, like the entire continent of Africa, produce only 3 million jobs opportunities. And that it shows, or it tells us how the kind of education we have, they're not really preparing our people to actually be creative, but rather to be employed, right? So everybody that you know graduate, just look forward to be employed in the companies that you mentioned, Gamma. And I think the concept or the talks of education, this basically is not really for now, but it's for the next generation. You know what I'm saying? Because I feel like, you know, we're already kind of too late. So we as youth, we as young people, we need to invest in our children to make sure that, you know, His Excellency, you're talking about the knowledge, to get the knowledge that will really help them once they graduate from school or whatever, because education is very important, but they need to be able to be creative, education about entrepreneurship, so that we may not just focus, you know, on being hired by somebody else. And we see these issues. We see, you know, things happened in Kenya just recently. You see a lot of African countries right now are sending Africans abroad, you know, to be employed in Saudi Arabia, to be employed in Canada. Kenya sent like 10,000 Kenyans to go there, right? But I'm asking myself, have you failed, you as a government, you as a leader, have you failed to create or to generate employment in your country and hire people? Have you failed to train your people, to give them skills that they'll be able to actually start their own business, start their own companies, and hire their friends or their relatives or people in the continent? And now we need to send people, you know, Zambia, they send, is it Zambia or Malawi? Malawi, I guess, they send people to Israel, you know, some of them as well to work there. So, I think this is what we need to be very clear about education, because it's not just all education is going to be supportive to us, but we need the right education that, you know, you graduate and you know exactly what you want to do. You know exactly where to go. You know how you're going to start your factory, your business. You know how to run it. And we're not just focused on being employed. Otherwise, you're going to end up having, you know, a lot of, and we have like 7 million Africans every single year. They don't have employment. And most of them, they end up, you know, running to, you know, to the West, to European countries. And most of them, they end dying there. And you have people like, you know, Eric Prince, who was just sharing the other days that, he was suggesting to come and to recolonize Africa simply because of the issue of immigrants, illegal immigrants that are moving from Africa going to the States. Yeah, Michelle, can go ahead.
I'm about to be controversial. There's some economic schizophrenia going on in what Gama's saying here. On the one hand, we're saying economically, we must stop being a continent that works for the benefit of Europe. In the same breath, we're saying we must badly bring European money. Where does the return from that money go? Back to Europe. I'm of the opinion there's no such thing as black wealth in Africa. It doesn't exist. All of the money on this continent is money borrowed from a central banking system that has its roots in Europe. And this is part of this education that Nongo talks about. This game, this economic game, was never made for Africa to succeed. It was designed by Europeans for Europeans, propagated by Europeans, to the specific exclusion of people all around the world. And I ask that we deepen our economic thinking slightly. Up here, we're saying we need factories, right? We need to develop industries. What do industries sit on top of? They sit on top of extractive industries. We need to be cutting down forests for wood. We need to be destroying sacred land in order to plant cotton so that we can start textile factories. We need to be destroying and making scars on the land to dig mines, to destroy ancient pieces of dense spirit in order to get the metals that we need to fund these factories, right? So when we're saying that we need more industrialization, we are saying we need to now be the ones destroying our land. And I'm not sure how this begins to start making sense, right? So this is why I agree with Nong, and I know that we're relatively on a similar thinking wave here. When I said earlier that we don't own the land between our ears, quoting Moponga J, this is what it means. We are allowing our thought to be farmed by European systems, by a European colonial system. And when it turns to education, I like to say, in Africa, we need an education system that is built for Africa and her needs today. So take the climate crisis as one of these specific needs. Research out of Stanford in the last 2 years indicates that for every 1 degree that the temperature globally increases, we will have a reduction of 17% on the harvest of simple grains like maize, right? So we are already globally at 1.5 degrees of heating. We are estimated likely by the time we get to 2100 on our current pathway, we are looking at 3 to 4 degrees of heating, which means we are looking at 40 to 60 or 40 to 50% reduction in the amount of maize. So in South Africa, the stable crop that the majority black population exists on and lives on is a nutritionally empty colonial food called pap. Pap does not fill people, or it fills people up, but it doesn't give them nutrition. It's bad for people's health. It causes lots of problems down the rest. But that is what majority people make themselves full on in their meals, even if they can only afford 1 piece of pap per day, right? The amount of pap in the system is going to decrease, which means we are going to see the price of pap increase. We need people to be able to grow food. We need people to have land to be able to grow food and recognize the full value of the land. When we say that we need to industrialize, what we are saying is that the land is only economic value. As Gama says, society rotates around the economy. No, society rotates around itself, around people, around the power of spirit and being. But we need to understand that this structure that we're trying to be good at and compete with Europeans on, it's not good for us. It's not good for our land. It's not good for our spirits, for our families, for our health, for nothing, for our mental health. So I get confused when I hear Gama come in here, and you can see Gama's ready to fight now. But I get confused because what we need to do is that concept of capital. We need to decolonize capital. We need to figure out what does it mean for us? How do we make it work for us? And importantly, how do we avoid the patterns of contradiction and accumulation that have caused capital to be the bane that it is on the world right now, functioning not towards the betterment of society, but flowing ever towards the bigger pile, usually in white hands.
I'm so excited.
Gama is ready to respond.
Yeah, look, I know that Nongo has a point of view.
Yeah, because we don't want to convert it to basically a debate, but to a fruitful engagement. I think, and Mitchell, I think, has already covered most of the points. And Mika, you mentioned 7 million young people that are unemployed because of the kind of education. It's not because of the fact that they're receiving education. It's merely because they are being miseducated on a daily basis. And that is why we have such a crisis. And I didn't think maybe we have to break down education. I'm thinking at this point, as young people, we can't think as futurists only to think that we are the future. We are the now. living in the present, having to come with solutions for the next generation. And what are those practical solutions? For example, if you take an example that my leader Gama is making of industrialization, who's going to work in those industries? Who's going to own those industries? Who are you competing with? Who have you prepared to be the owners of those companies? So it goes back to what Michelle is addressing. Let's understand the fundamentals, the basics, that which we must drive as a generation that is prepared to sacrifice for the next generation. Because if, for example, Michelle is a specialist in climate issues that I don't have enough information about, for him to absorb me, for him to be relevant in a South African context, he has to pass that education and that information to many South Africans. But if he comes with a specialization and Gama carries another specialization in another field, maybe robotics, and you come with IT and I come with farming and agriculture, and we are all prepared to invest in a small scale educational system, maybe create a school, for example, that will then be an example of what a school is supposed to look like. And Oriana, if I'm not mispronouncing it, it's already doing it. And that is what I think where I agree more with Michelle, where other systems understand how they want to run and they're not competing with anyone. They understand their own systems and they're running them successfully. And this is what we need to understand as Africans. Understand our identity and understand how we need to run our systems. If you don't want to deal with the issue of education, it will be like you are dealing with a tree that is producing a specific fruit, banana, for example. And you no longer want that tree to produce a banana. You want that tree to produce an apple, but you don't want to uproot the seed. You want to keep coming with ideas of cloning within the roots so that it gives a different fruit. And that's a wrong approach of doing things. We need to get to a point where we are not scared of revolutionizing the systems, because transformation on its own becomes then a vicious circle. So education becomes the fundamental, because then which I agree, land, and I agree with even with the analogy of the land that we own first here. I agree with that, because once we understand that value, it will be easy for us to come in this platform and say, how do we now, as we are in this place, with enough knowledge that we have, begin to transform or begin to revolutionize certain systems?
Yeah.
And I think I'm short because Michelle covered me a lot.
Look, colleagues, first of all, this is an exciting conversation. And Mika, don't forget to put up a petition. We must sign the petition for One Africa. So the most significant thing, colleagues, is that there's a presupposition that either communism or capitalism, or vice versa, communism or socialism with capitalism should be enemies. I don't subscribe to this, dualism or dichotomy of politics. The world is not black or white. There's a lot of gray areas in the world. And so I subscribe to a notion which we call social capitalism. It's healthy capitalism, right? I believe in free markets because the world is made of free markets. And I subscribe to the notion of black capital, to be clear, right? And because I come from an environment that has clearly defined what African wealth is. I come from a community where when you pass by our village from my mother to my father's side, you will ask for water, we will give you amasi, which is our milk. We come from a position where you grew up at our home, you did not share the same name, same clan name with us. You wanted a wife, we will go lobola for you. There's a saying in my language where we say, the beauty of a man is his cattle. Today that saying has been translated, to say the beauty of a man is his tenders. And so we definitely believe people must have money. We believe in material things, not immaterial things. And I want to caution against, this cynicism. It's cynicism, or, it's a form of philosophy that comes in through religion that says we must not have any material things here on earth. because we're going for the streets of gold, right? And this whole notion is rooted in Stoic belief, Stoic thinking. A lot of Eurocentric theologians, and I know none of these speakers here are theologians, a lot of Eurocentric speakers uproot these politics that were imported from Europe into Africa through the church, teaching us how to be poor, making us believe that poverty is an exit, making us sustainably maintaining poverty. If you look, for example, at an institution like the Apostolic Faith Mission or the Dutch Reformed Church, the pastor in the white community is wealthier than the pastor in the black community. And the pastor in the white community maintains the wealth through Afrikaans in the white community and keeps the black pastors back. And I say this because I'm an emerging theologian who studied at a theological institution like Stellenbosch. And I can tell you, it's money. It has nothing to do with loving people. It has nothing to do with, it has to be economics. So I know that here in South Africa, free markets work, but they don't work for everybody. They work for you if you are in the Dutch Reformed Church. They work for you if you are in the Afrikaans Apostolic Faith Mission, right? And so therefore, they don't like competition when the Nigerians and the Zimbabweans come in with African contextualized theology that's Pentecostal, because it focuses on taking their market. But that's a topic of another day, right? So I am not hypocritical about money. I don't have a money rejection complex. We must have money. Money is so important. In the meantime, there are two things that matter under the sun: the black vote and the black rand. And so therefore, we must build capital. And so I am a Gavist of note. I am of the position that the black rand must circulate. And the notion and the precedents around communism, it assumes the precedents that somehow at the top, there are some good moral leaders that somehow when they are responsible for the land and the economy, they will justly, disperse among each other. That utopia is not a reality. I support free markets because of the idea of personal sovereignty, that I am responsible for my own development. But that responsibility is not outside of the responsibility of those who disadvantage me if I am extremely disadvantaged. And so Moileke Mbeki speaks about, a new middle class of blacks that has been created, actually an upper class called, the previously disadvantaged individuals. And so then he critiques it negatively, but I would like to use this new group of black people in the community in a positive light to say, therefore, the beneficiaries of apartheid must be able to take the accountability and responsibility of saying, how do we uplift the blacks who have been disadvantaged? That is at a political level, right? So, and furthermore, I think business is a very great space of relating. We should stop trying to relate with politics. We should stop trying to relate with religion. We should start building trust. If, for example, Mitchell, you are a German and you have 2 billion behind you because you were a colonialism beneficiary that killed the Namibians, therefore you must do business with me, who is a Namibian, and be willing to share with me no matter how many times I fail. But of course, Mitchell raises a significant position that if we welcome foreign capital, who then assumes those returns? And of course, it is Europe who assumes those returns. And actually, Michelle, my point of view comes from the position of how do we cultivate our own mineral resources? How do we make sure we use efficiently those mineral resources? Like South Africa has one refinery for gold in Gauteng. We know that Rwanda just had its own refinery. We have the largest mineral deposits in the world. We don't need foreign capital. As a matter of fact, if we begin to center this industrial refinery technology within an African context and use the skills that we have, the skill base that we have, I am against a skills development. I'm of the position of a skills audit. I think we have too many informed people in the country. Let's audit the already existing ones, practicalize them behind the industries that we want to invest in, and then begin, like the president of Ghana, cut out exporting. They cut out exporting of cocoa. We cut out exporting of mineral resources. We sell them at an upper market. We make Europe beg. Look, I can tell you now, the stats are proving, the research is proving that Africa is the future. If Europe bets against Africa, they bet against themselves. They have old people who are dying in Europe, and they need money. That's why they're investing everywhere in Africa. They're investing everywhere, even Asia. So as I land my aeroplane, I think we should not be worried about free markets. And I think free markets are a good thing. Right? But the problem is closed markets within a South African context, where whites only want to do business with whites. And when they begin to do business with people of color, they don't do business at an eye-to-eye level. And so therefore, that's where then I say we must be able to manage and police the foreign policy, because it's not only domestic funds that are making white South African companies grow at scale. If we can decide today that we want to buy only from black, we want to only buy from black, you know, it would change the demographic. It would change the economic scale. An African-American friend of mine came here and made the fun and said, South Africans are very weak. What's happening with you? You are the majority. In Africa, in America, we are the minority, but we fight to the tooth to make sure that we are recognized. But here in South Africa, you are the majority. You don't own anything. What is wrong with you? Americans have BET, they have their own labels, they have their own this, they have their own that. In South Africa, we're still begging. And it goes back to the notion of education. Like I said, I was not rebutting the issue of education. I do rebut this notion of somehow some perfect people. I am not that perfect, and I have interest for public office. And I cannot say people should depend on me to justly, because I came from the church, equitably share resources with them. I can never. I have my favorites. My son is my favorite. My sister is my favorite. So this hope on the human condition is too, you know, obvious for me. That again, it is another it is another factor of brokenness, that we think we're so perfect that we can share equitably. But if we give people personal sovereignty and responsibility over their lives to do things at their own capacity, and then we try to subsidize them, I think we can go far. That's my opinion, by the way.
Yeah, appreciate, Gamma. Appreciate. I want to move on to the next topic, but I want to highlight what Mary Peace said in the comment section. He or she said that education is what you learn, not what you study. I think it's you know, very profound. I want to move on to the topic of leadership, and I'm going to start with you, His Excellence. But I want to read some of the tweets that I tweeted yesterday, and then I'll come to you, His Excellence. Most leaders are elected not because they are competent, but because they are willing to submit themselves to the leading elites and their political ideologies in line with their interests. The focus is not working for the interests of the country or the people, but for the one who appointed them. And the second quote, most of our leaders are political-based appointments and not competence-based recruitment. They are appointed based on political connections. As a result, rise to mediocre leadership in Africa. Most of them don't have the right skills and capacity to lead. So my question is this to you, His Excellence. What kind of leadership do you think South Africa needs today? And I know I don't know when it's going to be the election, but I want us to move to the leadership, because everything that we talk about here, I think it's pointing back to the leadership, right? So with the quote that I read, just in case if you have any thoughts about it, but also what kind of leadership the South Africa needs today?
Thank you, His Excellency. I think South Africa needs leadership with a vision for the country. I believe that nations that rose out of their poverty, it was true leadership that had a vision and a plan for the country. And for the people to understand the plan and buy into the plan. I think there's a lot of voices currently in the country in terms of the political parties. They are saying a lot of things, and also some of things a bit divisive, some of things uniting. But I think everyone means well. But at the same time, I think there is no party that really has, currently for me, that's just my observation looking at all the political parties, that has a vision, a strong vision for the country. You know, I normally looked at, like, for example, if you look at the 2010 World Cup, everyone was focused on the World Cup, regardless of our differences. We knew that we need to host this World Cup. We need to succeed. We need to make sure that our stadiums are built on time. We need to make sure that everything is proper for the people who are coming. I think we still need something like that, where as a country we need to really look into. As a country, we need things that are going to build the country. That should be a uniting factor in terms of, like, for example, now one of the issues is electricity, power, which is some people are calling it a pandemic. They say electricity shortages are a pandemic now in South Africa. It's no longer
Same here, brother. It's a new
So,
pandemic in Africa right now.
you know, the power issue, electricity, because for many years we've enjoyed having 24 hours of electricity, but now, boom, we do not have electricity. And so, for example, we need those common things that are going to help the country to go ahead. Like electricity affects everyone. Water is also another issue that's been creeping in now and then. It has not been talked so much about, but there is a water issue also in the country. So things like that, water, education, things that we know that each and everyone needs to have. Each and everyone will need to go to school. Each and everyone needs water. Each and every one of us needs electricity. All those common things, I think there's no leaders currently who are really speaking about them. Most of the leaders, sometimes I think they're just looking at who's making mistakes on this, corruption. No, this one is corrupt. Sometimes we miss the point. When I look at other political parties across in my country, I think most of them, they're centered around ANC's mistakes. We sometimes I just fail to even know their policies. That's why when you look how to convince the youth to really vote, you also need to make sure that if people are going to vote for a new leadership or a new party or whatever, they need to know what do you stand for. Because sometimes I just look at the parties, they just come with accusations or talking about like the ruling party's corruption cases, taking them to court. We end up missing what do you stand for? Things like that. So I think if we need more organizations that we are going to say, or leaders that are going to say, South Africa, today we are faced with the power crisis. How do we make sure that we go back to having 24 hours electricity, and our electricity is a human right. Electricity should become a human right. Water should become a human right. It is a human right, and everyone needs to have access to those resources. And how do we expand the cake, the economy? How do we make sure that people are active in this economy, are part of the building of this economy? How do we make sure that all the industries can talk to one another, whether it's the arts, whether it's the engineering, all these industries? We need somebody who's going to unite the country through things that are really common, because obviously we'll have different ways of how we can handle these things. But so we need a vision, people that can talk about the vision for the country, where they can see this country going. When you look at countries like China, Singapore, you look at all those countries, they had long-term plans and a vision. And I think 94, when the government took over, like for example, the ANC party, the African National Congress took over, a lot of people, there was a lot of excitement. There was what Mandela did when they call him a unifier, he had a vision to say, guys, we need to come together. We do not need to divide one another. We need each other. If we can, as a country, can say we need one another. It's not about whether you're from Eastern Cape, I'm from KZN, you're from whatever. We need to know that we all need something. In our corners, we have issues that are going to affect us. And it's not good for my neighbor not to have, and while I have, I enjoy all the things. We need to make sure that everyone has access and to all the opportunities to strive to become better at whatever they want to be. So I think currently what's lacking is leadership that can unite the people. In terms of South Africa, we need to work together. No, it won't be one group of people who will do everything, and no one group of people knows everything, and no one group of people will have all the money and do everything. We need one another, and we need to work together in building this economy, this generation, and this country. A lot of things are not working well in this country. Currently, a lot of people are really negative about the country. You don't really have the positive vibes in this country. Hence, people are going into alcohol, going into other things. While there's so much that we need to be focusing on in building this country. We know, as South Africans, most South Africans, if you ask them, they know they have a great country. And they know if South Africa can pool its forces, no country can, we know that we have so much potential. That's why when we sometimes lose to other countries, we look at it that man, we know our true potential, but then we are not pulling together as a country. This one is pulling this group there, this one is pulling this one here. That's why there's no growth where it involves everyone. But I wish to see a leadership in terms of all the parties that are coming up. We need to see their policies. Since we talk about election, we need to know about their policies. We do not need to see you filling the stadium and just say, wow, he's got the numbers. But what is the true policy? What is it? You can't just give us a slogan and we think that's a policy, because a country is run by so many things, and we need people who are really willing to work. And I think someone said something about the sacrifice. I think it was Honongo who talked about a sacrifice for us, for the generation to take something. What are we going to leave this generation that's coming? Are we going to say we were drinking, we were partying, and it was all fun, it was all good? No, we need something that we can really say our children can say our forefathers left us A, B, C at least. They left this foundation. We need to build from this foundation. But more, I think, from the leadership perspective, I think we do need people that are willing to tackle the issues of South Africa: electricity, water, access to education. We do have policies, good policies. And even the ruling party, they have good policies, Mika, to be honest. They have good policies, but implementation has always been a factor as well, where they get questioned, and then we get people that are not doing the right things. I think we do have good policies that are in place. That's why even other political parties that are coming, somehow you look at their policies, it's not far from the ruling party. It's just so close that they are not vocal about what do they stand for. So I think we can build well if we can really know and understand that as a country we need one another and we need to work to build this country. It's not going to be one or few people. And it's not going to be like the Mandela effect where people kind of like put all their hopes in one man's leadership. And that one man came 5 years and he was out. So we do need, he just built the foundation. He couldn't take us to the promised land. He was the Moses of our time, Mandela, for example, but he could not take us to the promised land. It's up to us. We are the Aarons of today, the Joshua of today that needs to take the people to the promised land. And for us to do that, we need to work together. We need to unite the country through all the issues that I mentioned. Power, it's a big topic. Water is a big topic. Education, crime is a big topic. Unemployment is a big topic. How are we going to do those things? Because sometimes I think people just say, no, the ANC is not doing anything. But if you're given the opportunity now to go and become, let's say, Minister of Employment or Labor, whatever you want to call it, the how part, and how do you unite people in terms of to bring the right people, bringing the right skills, and also people, because you can have people who have the right skills but not have the drive. You know, understand? So I think we need that kind of a vision for the country. I know that every leader, every party will come and say this is our vision, but I think the unifying part should be about the issues that are facing this country and where this country needs to go from here.
Yeah,
that's the leadership
Michelle?
I think we need currently.
I
appreciate Brother Ezra.
With everything Brother Ezra said here. Brother Ezra, I'm going to be that political party and say, please go read our manifesto, because it basically addresses everything that you've done there. And one of the reasons I was very hesitant to get involved in politics for a long time, and why Razum Zanzi spoke to me, was because no one that I work with thinks that this is a one election play. We are on a 30-year mission with a 30-year vision. It took 30 years to end up here where we find ourselves with all of these crises. It's going to take a nation 30 years to build a nation. So that long-term vision, that long-term planning and strategic perspective, we've created a framework for that, and it's called our People's Manifesto. And it took us 8 months of consultations with over 200 towns, villages, and cities across the country to ask South Africa, what do you want this country to look like in 30 years? And what solutions do the people have to get us there? So that's just a little bit of something about the work that we do, and I'm actively involved in that process. But about leadership specifically, so you can have the greatest plan on God's green earth, but if you don't have the leaders to implement it, it means exactly nothing. So our number one priority in our manifesto is leadership and governance reform. How do we make sure that we actually put the people with the capacity and the ability, the drive, the motivation, the ethics, the integrity, the good leaders? How do we get them into those positions? And that's what we address there. More broadly about leadership, I believe that the best leaders are those who plant the seeds of trees, the shade of which they will never enjoy. And this speaks to Nongo's point about sacrifice. must understand from an agricultural perspective, for us to have cheap maize meal in South Africa today, it means that our descendants 30 years from now will not be able to have maize meal. For us to have cheap electronics, I mean, not cheap, but for us to have electronics today, for us to live in, and again, I agree with Gamma. There's the dichotomistic thinking doesn't get us anywhere. You know, binaries between capitalism, communism. Also interesting that as soon as I said, I didn't mention any of those words, Gamma. You brought in those European concepts to this discussion. But in order for us to have these cheap goods and resources that we have today, those are not free of cost. We are just deferring that cost onto future generations. So the sacrifice that we actually have to begin to dialogue about and to internalize is a significant sacrifice. And that's it. It's about future planning. It's about recognizing, and I think that this is why, and I think it was one of the first discussions I ever had with Gamma, is something that we need to revive a little bit. Because of how much it was sidelined, because of colonialism and Christianity to a degree as well, is the power of ancestorhood as political dialogue. So why do we remember the ancestors, right? We remember them because they gave us everything that is today. They created the world in which we live today, and in gratitude and reverence and respect for them and the place that they stand around us today, we remember them, and we remember them with thanks, and we remember them with honor. And I think today, the emerging group of leadership in Africa needs to be asking themselves, what type of ancestors do we want to be? How do we want to be remembered? Do we want to be remembered as the people who helped to end suffering, end poverty, end homelessness, survive the climate crisis, make sure that women are safe, decolonize education, and return the power of Africans, or create the conditions in which Africans can reclaim their own power? Or do we want to be a generation who only offered the world a shinier piece of poo? Modular reform doesn't get us very far. So the leaders today, those ones who want to plant those seeds, they also need to be willing to be brave, to stand up to systems of power. And more than anything else, we need leaderships who are willing to redefine the future on African terms, or on Afrocentric terms, more accurately, for African purposes, which I believe are cosmic purposes of harmony and interbeing.
Colleagues, I'm so sorry that I have to leave now, but I just want to say thank you so much for this opportunity to be sharing this seat with you and this dialogue with you. And I'm super excited for the next one. And thank you so much. And my last remark would be, we must look at strengthening families, communities, and opportunity. If we break the bedrock of families, we break communities. And if we break communities, then there will be no opportunities. My name is Gama Cuba, President of the People's Movement for Change Youth Command. Super excited meeting all of you in person. Love you a lot. Thank you.
Appreciate, brother. See you again soon. Perhaps next week. Nongo, you go ahead.
Thanks. And I'll go back to your important question of leadership. And I want to say, we do have leaders in South Africa. We do have leaders in Africa. And part of those leaders are us. We are facing each other as leaders as we are sitting here. And that is why you will realize that all of us had to take an advantage of 2024 elections and ensure that we fully participate in it. And that is why I had to be part of Forum for Service Delivery, where I have direct influence and policy influence to ensure that my voice is heard. And that is why Mitchell had to be part of Rise Mzansi and Gamma had to be part of People's Movement. Because I think all of us, what we tried to ensure was to ensure that we become part of a movement and an organization that we are close to and where we have influence in. Because there's no time now to join an organization where you must fight for your space with people who are not leaders, but who are executors of instructions. And that is the most fundamental important thing. Secondly, effect like of long-term solutions, also long-term plan, of long-term vision. But what is different about 2024 is that we already have an advantage of having not in South Africa, but in Africa at large. And so you will see Forum for Service Delivery is the first political party to join New Nation together with Abacha Force of Change and other civic organizations in the electoral bill that was being in front of the Court of Law in South Africa. And that is one of the advantages that we already have, that we as young people should take advantage of when we get to Parliament now in 2024, without trying to wait for a long term, because it's a short-term transitional revolution that will ensure that in a long term, we have the right leaders to execute all the good ideas and plans that we have. So the electoral bill simply advocates for independent candidates to be able to contest elections. And that is why I'm saying we do have leaders. If the systems in place can allow the leaders to manifest, and the electoral bill is one of the platforms. And these new organizations like Forum for Service Delivery that I'm representing, like Rise Mzansi that Mitchell is representing, are also a platform that are giving young people and giving leaders in general that have leadership skills the space and the platform. Because it has been clear in South Africa, I think Ezra already expressed, that it is difficult to find an alternative organization, simply because most of them are already vanguards of the systems. They are already executors of instruction. The second advantage of having an issue, which is a long-term vision, but also has an advantage in 2024 elections, because once we get into Parliament in 2024, you don't have to deal with free education in South Africa. It's already free. Basic education is free. Higher education is free. But why are South Africans not enjoying the fruit of free education? It's because of corruption. It's because of the NSFAS systems of cadre deployment. It's because of the bad leadership that is there. If you take the 5.6 billion injected into a third-party system called NSFAS, that's already free education. And if you look at the income streams of NSFAS, they are receiving more than 5.6 billion a month, a year. So 5.6 billion is just one stream of income from the government. Then they have streams of incomes from service providers who seek to be in their system. So if you want to provide accommodation in South Africa to students, you must pay a fee to NSFAS. That's another stream of income. They also have international funders and donors. That's another stream of income that they have. And they also have voluntary donation from independent citizens. So they have about 4 streams of income. So we are talking about billions that they are making. And if you were to take those billions and make it a direct injection into an education system, that's a complete free education on its own. And with a capita of about 60,000 rand per individual student, that's more than enough. It requires the correct leadership, ethical leadership, and it requires young people who are fearless to step into these spaces and take over the country. And I think we are here, Meka. We have leaders, and we are calling all young people to continue to make the right choices. We are calling young people to register to vote. We are calling young people to vote for change. And we are calling young people to connect with us because we are available. We are not those leaders who have multiples of PA. And when you have to talk to us, there's a huge red tape. We are in a dire need of revolution. And our revolution in 2024 will be in an electoral form. And I think South Africans are ready for that.
So good. So good. And anyone want to add anything before we? I think this is kind of topic that we're gonna talk for a while. I mean, leadership, even in our next panel as well. We really need to go deep down because when you look at the graphics, I think in most of African countries as well, youth are not really in a front line when it comes to vote and all this stuff. And I think because of fat youth, a lot of youth, are tired and basically hopeless and helpless when it comes to politics. Like, when you just mention politics, they don't want to hear anything about it because it doesn't do any good to us. And I think we are the generation that is highly affected by the mistakes of the current leaders that are making. I'm not saying everything they do is mistakes, but there are obvious things. For example, for so long time as Africans, we believe, like I talk to youth all the time, and some of them, most of them actually believe that Africa is poor, like believe that with everything they got. But, in order for few people to make money in the continent, because you have these just elites, just politicians, is the easy way of making money and creating wealth, right? Most of them, they don't even have their accounts here in the continent. They have somewhere else. They do that. In order for them to remain where they are, then the rest of Africans, we must believe that we are poor. And we don't see, like most of youth lost hope for a better life in Africa. That's why majority of our people are moving away from the continent. They don't want to stay here. They move away. And they go away. They live in the States, in the Canada, in the UK. Most of them are educated. They have high skills, but they don't want to work in the continent. Those who remain in the continent, they're still here. They don't have, when it comes to the vote or whatever, they can easily, most of them, I speak from my country, they can easily be manipulated by by politicians, and just by a little money in their pockets, they can actually vote for someone who doesn't have anything, actually even a plan or a vision for a country. And another issue is that, for example, in my country, I take an example in my country because I know better here. You have like 5 years, and then you have another 5 years, 10 years. So even the vision and the plans that they come with is only for 10 years. So every single leader is there to just implement his own policy that will work for 10 years. And after that, he's gone. Somebody else is coming to try to create his own legacy. We are lacking, and we're missing the vision of like 50 or 30, 100, 500 years to come. I visited Dubai last year, and I went to this museum, like Vision Museum, and I was looking at the Dubai in 1,000 years to come. These guys, they have already planned. They're already visioning about the Dubai in the next 1,000 years later. You can see, you're in your country, you're thinking about 10 years. You don't even have vision of the country. You don't know where a country is going. Every single leader you have in the country is coming to implement his or her own agenda. But we don't have the country vision. We don't have the continent vision, that no matter who leader is coming in the regime, they must carry on that vision until the end. Like as a country, as a nation, we must have a vision for the country in 100 years to come. It doesn't matter which party you're coming from. It doesn't matter who you are, but you need to implement the vision of the country and add extra of yourselves or policies. But we don't have that. We lack that. And therefore, most of us, we just think that we are poor. We don't have anything. But rich people, they keep getting richer in the continent. And poor, they keep getting poorer as well. So this is it's something that is dear to my heart, these days, because I feel like, what is happening in the continent and in our countries, in South Africa or other parts, there's a hugely, it's because of the failure of leadership. I don't know. Anyone else who wants to jump in, please, you can go ahead.
I think another thing is someone we had a similar discussion with some friends regarding this, because when we were trying to look at countries like China, look at countries like even Dubai or the Emirates, UAE, and all those countries, that most of them it's easy. Someone was telling us that it's easy for them to implement 100-year plan because it's a sort of a monarchy. It's like a one-state party countries like China and them. They don't really have a lot of options where there's competing forces, competing interests. Hence, they can have a 300-year plan. But when you come into countries where there's a lot of parties and different views, where people are open to talk about anything and free to even start their own parties and free to stand up for society, it becomes a bit of a challenge sometimes to have like 100-year plan and things like that. Even though there are things that we can say as a country, this is this we must all do. It's like how for example, when you look at maybe Rwanda, how everyone bought into the idea that we need to keep our country clean. You understand? Just a simple thing like tidiness, and say plastic will not even entertain it, you know, and things like that. A simple thing from even a leader's perspective, any leader who's in charge, whatever party you're coming from, but if you can have things, basic things for the people so that they can understand it and we do it. You understand? Like for the people of Rwanda, they already knew that if our country is clean, we can promote tourism. I mean, nature-wise, I mean, they look at so many. You can look at so many things. You can break it down in so many ways. What's the benefit of having a clean and tidy country? And they are reaping their rewards. I mean, look at Rwanda. It's so small, but it's attracting a lot of people than even other bigger countries. We have so many even touristic places because of just one thing they did right, just cleaning the country. You can say now Kigali is not really a big city. It's just it's just a medium-sized city compared to other cities. But look at how they've built themselves or just bought that vision. Even if the maybe let's say President Paul Kagame gets voted out by somebody else, but as a nation, they already have that thing to say, we are the cleanest country in Africa, and we need to keep to that standard. Simple things. Sometimes, as much as we can have so many leaders or different parties, but we need to have those things that are very basic for the people to understand, to say, we need cleanliness, hygiene, why we need just simple things. That's part of leadership, just to tell your people instead of just doing things that are like, for example, maybe making tenders just for your political connections. You mentioned something on your Instagram about the political connections, where somebody has to have a tender or a business in government because it will benefit them and there will be kickbacks and all that. But things like simple things that every person can just buy into. They know, you know, like somebody can control, like they can litter in the streets. Let's say you're in the city, you just throw a piece of banana on the road. But in your house, you do that. You don't do that in your house. You won't just throw things anywhere and just say, my wife will clean. No, you don't do that. Like basic thing that you know from your house that you don't do it outside. If you know that you keep your house clean, keep, even wherever you go, keep it clean. Doesn't matter if there's people who are working in the street to clean you after your mess. You just keep it clean, just keep it tidy. Just even with corruption, things like that, just to know that, man, I'm not the only one who's going to suffer if I do wrong in this.
Yeah,
I need to do,
you know. Yeah, I'm sorry for cutting you, His Excellence. I think you raised really important point about, you know, the example I gave in Africa as well, and I think this is one of the reasons why I had to share this quote, because you know democracy. You have a lot of people who actually argue that democracy is not really working for the continent. Perhaps it works somewhere else. But from what we know, it doesn't really work anywhere, to be honest. Even those countries that are calling themselves democratic country, it doesn't really work for them. But the thing that I'm trying to address is this, that, you know, I think it is important for us, maybe a country or a continent, to agree in the most basic ideas, right? We know that in the continent right now, you know, or in your country and my country, you know, basic needs is still issue to a certain group of people, right? It's still an issue in Africa. When you talk about food security, you know, when you talk about, you know, even electricity these days, the same thing, internet, you know, the same thing, clean water. You're talking about, you know, education, and all this stuff. So if as a leader, you know, we come together and we know that the first interest that I have is the country, even before my party, because you're not there to just to fulfill the duty of your party, but you're there to work for the people and for the country. Because I mean, if I have my own party, then I represent a little number of people from the entire population of the country. So basically having the vision of the country, things that we all agree, like us as South Africa, this is where we want to head. Like for the next 10 years, we want to make sure that we don't have, electricity pandemic, in the country. We don't want to have, guns running around. We don't have this one. If it's kind of like having constitution, you know what I'm saying? Like something that all of us would do agree, then we know as a country where we're heading, no matter who the leader is coming. But then, you as a runner or as a leader elect that you want to become maybe a leader of a country, then you and your party, you can come with other policies to implement whatever that you want to, the ways to implement these visions of the country and where we want to be. Because I kind of feel like we constantly have different leaders in Africa and everybody come with their own issue, and we still have the same problems that we had 60 years ago. And it seems like, we have good policies, we always talk about them, but we don't get things done. And so because we put so much hope on individuals, because of their charisma, because of what they say, because of the ethics and whatever, but the job is not really done. Because as a country, we don't know where we're going. Like we don't know the election. I mean the direction. Where are we really going? You know what I'm saying? And so people are just there to work for the interests of their parties or small majority. But what about the rest of the people? Yes, Michelle, you look like you have something to say.
No, so yeah, I just want to comment here. Mika, if you ever do get the opportunity or able to make it happen, I would recommend that you reach out to a Pan-Africanist by the name of Brian Kagoro out of Zimbabwe.
Right.
So much of what you are saying resonates with him, and he knows what he's talking about in terms of the scale of the problems and how to build the interconnections between governments. It's something that we talk about a lot, while our leader at Rise does. He said something that we failed to do in '94 in South Africa is nation building, right? We keep talking like we have to, communities have to do X and Y. What communities? People are across the country, doesn't matter what racial base you look at. People are living very isolated, small lives, right? And there's no common understanding of purpose, of long-term vision, of why we are here, right? And there's different answers, obviously, to that question. Like even just now, Gama would say we're here to make a successful economy, and Nongo would say that we're here to build a decolonized free education system. But I think that there's got to be a sense of purpose that kind of comes before that. So I'm of the opinion that any government that cannot provide to its people food, water, housing, electricity, shelter, healthcare, and safety in perpetuity, and you got to plan so that 300-400 years from now, the people in the country get all of those 6 things. So that's the perpetuity element. So you got to do the long distance planning. Any government that doesn't plan and execute to do that during its governance run is no government at all, because then they are missing their fundamental purpose, right? Because each of those things are linked to what I call an unfreedom. Doesn't matter. You can have, you can have a Rolls Royce and a mansion and a Fortune 500 company. If for some reason you don't have food, you're not free, right? So the same goes for housing. The same goes for clothing. There are certain things that are enablers of freedom, right? And there's a term in philosophy, a difference, what we call a positive freedom and a negative freedom, right? On the one hand, you have freedoms to do things, right? And that's what the current system is pretty good at enabling people to do. The freedom to start a business, the freedom to go to school, the freedom to choose what you wear, and annoyingly, the freedom to stand in a supermarket and struggle between 500 different types of conditioner, right? That's a weird freedom for me. But we also need to be talking about freedoms from poverty, freedoms from hunger, freedoms from homelessness, right?
Yeah.
And between those two ideas of freedom, and this is a continental issue, right? We need to be solving for the conditions of freedom, not just giving people access and the opportunity to start businesses in X, Y, and Z. Because, you know, if someone has a homestead where they're growing their own food, some local businesses that are, some people's growing hemp or growing cotton, they're making clothing, and the community is growing food together, and there is some schools and some recreational facilities. That person doesn't need a job. They don't need employment. What are you talking about? Why must they go and work, spend all their time for less money than it's worth to work for someone else, right? Like, they shouldn't, as adults, only be the choice between wage slavery and starvation. We need to broaden that potential, I think, a little bit. So with what we're talking about here, I think, unfortunately, this is, for me, it's a matter of spirit, right? When we're talking about leadership, and I'm sure you guys would have had similar experiences in your life. If I had to ask you right now, and this is something that I'll get into more because it's quite central to my thinking and my philosophy. If I had to ask you, what does vibe mean? If we say the vibes are good, right? Both of you right now, you have an understanding of what that means. But no one has ever told you what vibes mean, right? So you can also, when you meet someone, you can tell, hey, this person's good vibes, or this person, this is bad vibes, right? We need leaders who are on vibe. People who understand how beautiful and how emotive and expressive and the potential and wonder and creativity of where we find ourselves planted in this universe. And leaders who are willing to look at that and grab it and reach for it. Not leaders who are willing to say, oh, we'll try this purpose on from this different place. Oh, no, I like this Chinese purpose over here. No, we need leaders who are willing to be guided by the spirit of this land where we find ourselves. Because I like this metaphor. The spirit is so clean in this part of the world. It's muddied now because of colonialism and injustice and all of these things, but so clean that over hundreds of thousands of years, everything vibrated so perfectly that it created diamonds in such abundance that they ran down a river to the sea. That is the potential of Africa, if we choose to vibe with the universe. And I think that you can quite easily tell when you get into politics and stuff whether a leader is on vibe or whether something's happening there.
Yeah, gentlemen, you know, we're not gonna stay here the whole night long. But as I expressed, I want to be having this conversation perhaps every single week, you know. So I know we talk in behind the scenes, and we have a lot of things to discuss, a lot of things to talk, a lot of topic to cover. For today, allow me to end here. But knowing that we are going to continue with this conversation and also bringing more guests. There are more of people that I know from the side of South Africa as well that I would like to bring them, you know, next week as well, at least to have gender balance a little bit. So one of my sister might be coming next week as well. It's gonna be really amazing. But I want to appreciate you guys for setting your time aside and coming here and to just talk about, you know, the continent we love and our countries. I appreciate so much for your time.
Thank you so much for having us, Mika.
His Excellence, thank you so much. Michelle,
Thank you.
Appreciate, man. We shall talk there. All right. Hey guys, well, that will be the end of our conversation today. Well, stay tuned. We're gonna come back here next week as well, hopefully the same day and the same time for more of this conversation. It's very important. So if you're from South Africa, don't hesitate to leave your comments. Even if you're not from South Africa, in this stream, we'll be able to go through your comments. But as well, if there's anything that you'd like to know, any question, anything that you'd like to see in the coming conversation, please let us know in the comment section. But on all, I appreciate you guys for staying, and I appreciate for staying here. Don't forget to smash the like button. We've been live on Twitter, I mean X these days, Instagram, and here YouTube as well. Next time we'll be live on TikTok as well, because we want to reach to as many people as we can, and we want everybody to get this information. Information is knowledge, and I think it's very important. And today it was really beautiful to have different opinions, different ideas. If you came late, don't hesitate to go back to watch this. The stream will be available on our channel. We're not going to take it down. So please just, be informed, enjoy, check it out, and it's going to be really amazing. So I'm just going to raise a word of prayer as I finish, and I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow, we're having a really nice conversation as well. Let me just say that before I leave. Let me share here with you guys to see. Tomorrow, we're having really nice conversation here with one of our sisters from, she's an African descendant, all the way from the US. And but she's in Kenya right now. She's been there for a couple of years. She's building a very strong community there of our people. And she's going to be here with me tomorrow to talk about this right here. So you can see on our YouTube channel, actually, if you go, just type Swahili Nation, you can actually see right here. Beyond Borders, Traverse Culture Quest for African Heritage on the world stage. This, I think this is going to be really important conversation to have. So please, let me share the link with you guys. Right now, if you go to our channel, you'll be able to see it. It's here already. So you can actually like and turn on the notification button so that you don't miss it tomorrow around the same time at 9 p.m. East African time. It's gonna be real. I'm really excited for this conversation. I'm gonna drop the comments down. This is the conversation about diaspora and the continent as well. So even if you're not in the continent, you have your sister who is actually doing incredible in Kenya, building really huge community. And tomorrow we're gonna get to hear more in detail of what she does. So stay tuned, subscribe, turn on the notification button, help us to reach 500K. 500,000K, and it's gonna be incredible. Thank you for everybody who has been here. Thank you for the member who just joined and became a member. Thank you for everybody that was expressing your thoughts today. We did not get time to go through the comments, but in our next session next week, we'll be able to go through that and perhaps ask and answer different questions from you guys. All right, God, I thank you for today. Thank you for this conversation and everything that we talked about here today. Our desire is this continent to to be transformed, not by anyone but by us. And so the information that we share, the talks and conversation that we do, is the first step towards the change that we want to see, we want to bring to this continent. Give us strength, give us wisdom, give us courage through it all. Glorify your name for everything that has happened here today. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Guys, appreciate. Thank you so much. I'll see you guys tomorrow, same time, for another conversation. I love you guys.